right now we have Jordi Boggiano and Alexander Makarov, and they will do a great interview. I'm sure it will be a great interview. And I wanted to say, Jordi, it's really glad to see you again, because we've seen you like in 2015 on our conference, and five years later, you're here with us online. So thank you very much.
Well, thanks for having me.
We're going to have an interview, and me asking questions is Alexander Makarov, currently framework lead, but that's not really important. The important person is Jordi, and why he's important? It is because he's one of the maintainers and the main guy behind the composer and packages, and that's the thing that changed PHP landscape quite drastically. So he has more cool things, and I'm going to ask about this. So let's start. That's a warm-up question, and it's about the conferences. So Irina mentioned that you've been quite active in 2015, and I remember it quite well. You were saying like you were month traveling from a conference to conference. So what changed in this regard, and how do you feel? Was it like a good time or bad time, or?
Yeah, I think I had a few years, like 2-3 years, where I really did a lot of conferences. Like I don't remember, but I think like 16 or 18 was the max in a year, and there was lots of fun, lots of traveling and everything. But it's also really exhausting, especially if it's not like your main job as a developer evangelist or something like that. So because I had to still do work on the side and then open source stuff, and so it was a bit too much. So I tried to reduce a little bit. And then a year ago I had a kid as well, and that put another level of reduction, let's say, in the travel and all of that. So the last, I don't know, actually the last conference I've been at was SymphonyCon in December. So that's been 6 months.
Last year, right?
Yeah.
No offline conferences this year.
No, so far nothing. I mean, obviously everything has been cancelled or postponed, so that didn't help. But I didn't have any big plans anyway, so I'm just taking it easier and trying to focus more on life and work, I guess.
All right, so we started with conferences, and as far as I remember, your talks were not strictly about the composer or other libraries you did, but about really broad amount of topics. So have you learned all that doing open source, or, well, what is your daily jobs that allow to learn all that, and what is it typical? Is it typical to do so as an open source contributor?
So, I mean, if I look at the jobs I had, let's say in the past, mostly it was web agencies. So just crunching out web applications, nothing super special. And then I got more and more involved into open source. And since the last 5 years, I would say 5-6 years, I've been working on one product, which is teamup.com, and in parallel to that, I'm working on private packages and the whole open source like Composer and packages.org. So I kind of have these two things at the same time at the moment, more or less 50-50, and yeah, I guess I learned most of it on the job, really. Like, I mean, on the job or working on open source, for sure, I'm also learning tons while working on open source. But I didn't really, like, I did some studies in some sort of multimedia thing that more about like movie editing and special effects and like Photoshop and stuff like that, like more visual aspects than than really web programming. And so I learned a bit of ActionScript back then, which was the Flash programming language, which kind of looks like TypeScript today, I guess. So that was fairly similar. But otherwise, I don't really have like a formal education in the sense of programming.
Okay, but on the current project, what are your actual responsibilities? I mean, I've seen that you're a Scrum Master, right?
Ooh, that's really outdated.
Do you work like as a Scrum Master or not?
No. I took the Scrum certification like, I don't know, probably 10 years ago at this point. I don't remember when, but I think it's about 10 years ago. I did this for a while, like working in Scrum teams, but since then it's been really small teams and more, let's say, on the fly process, less structured than a formal Scrum thing. So now, like my current responsibilities, I'm at Team Up. I have the head of engineering title, which is it's mostly development, but also just taking technical decisions. I mean, it's a very small team, so you cannot just be like leading people. I have to also.
What is the team size?
Myself. Like developers were like 3, 4, let's say.
Okay, that's the right size.
And so on. So, and then with packagist and composer, I'm mostly. I don't have a title really. I'm just doing things that need to get done.
All right. Yeah. So now about more tricky things. So as far as I know, you're trying to make the composer like a sustainable open source. What is your thought about that? How is private packages doing? And is it a success or not really?
Okay. Yeah, I've talked about that a lot at conferences as well, right? Like the whole aspect of open source, like what it means to maintain projects, and especially bigger projects like that kind of require a lot of attention and time. So yeah, we've been trying to get this on a more sustainable path for a long time. I mean, the project like Composer was started in 2011, so 9 years, a bit over 9 years ago. So we tried for a long time, and then with private packages, I think we finally succeeded at that. Like we now have a couple employees working on private packages as well, and that's also affording me the time to work on it, and Niels is also working on it, like on the open source stuff, I mean. So I would say it's been successful, yes. It's definitely allowed us to spend time on it, like during, working hours, which now having a kid and everything, like, if I don't have that, it's over. Like there's no way I'm going to be here every weekend and evening. Like I just don't have the energy anymore for this. So I'm glad we kind of managed to fix that before it was too late in a way. Like was.
So the sustainable open source is possible, right? Why haven't you pursued the goal earlier?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I guess we should have. But I think it was a timing thing as well. Like it's just it was hard to focus enough energy and time into building something that will bring money, and like it's just hard to combine all these things. And eventually we just found the right time where we had enough free time, let's say, to really kickstart it. And yeah, I think I would say it's possible, but it's the challenge remains that it's still a very like ad hoc thing. Like every project can and needs to figure out their own way to do this, and for smaller projects, it's probably difficult to really build like a huge thing around them. I mean, you know, I'm sure you've seen like GitHub sponsors, and there's Tidelift as well. There's like a bunch of projects which have been around now for the last couple of years, trying to get more money into open source, and I think that's good. I think for some people it kind of worked as well, like with sponsors, they can get enough money flowing in that they can actually spend most of their time on open source. I think it doesn't have to be like 100% thing either, right? Like if you have a few smaller projects and you get some money coming in, then maybe you can have a deal with your job to work less, or I don't know, if you can work like a half day less per week or a day less per week, then maybe you can spend that time on open source and still get some income. So I think there are many models there where people have to look at what works for them. But I'm hoping it's going in the right direction, let's say.
Great. So my personal thanks for the one thing you forgot to mention. It's a composer font command that shows the links to the funding options for a package. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And it helps the making sustainable open source overall. That was a very good idea. So about the composer, about the team. So you said like there are two people working like full time for private packages, right? But you also mentioned Niels Adderman. What's Niels' role in all this, and what is current buzz factor? Because well, you know, the composer is the most important thing, one of the most important things in the PHP infrastructure and the packages as well. So it's very satisfying to know that we are kind of safe.
Yeah. Well, I think having the company behind it definitely helps in that sense, because we have, you know, more people that have access to all the things and kind of that will have time, let's say, to take over if one of us just can't anymore. And yeah, regarding Niels, well, he's, I would say, also kind of half and half. He's working a lot on private packages and like managing product there and so on, and doing all the stuff around the company which needs to be done, which is also a lot of work. And then he's also helping out with Composer when he can, let's say. So I would say on Composer it's mostly me, but with a lot of input from Niels and also a lot of contribution from people. Like those are not working for us, let's say, but there's lots of people.
So that's that truly a community project. That's good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, do you hire?
At the moment, not really, no. But you know, if people keep getting subscriptions, maybe we can hire more people at some point.
Okay, so I suggest people to subscribe, because that would speed things up and that would be good. So about packages, what's the current infrastructure behind it? Is it currently Amazon Web Services? What are monthly expenses, if it's not a secret? And is it possible to use like binary protocol to reduce bandwidth if it's a problem?
So for packages.org, like so packages.com, like private packages is all hosted on AWS and with full redundancy and whatnot, and that's just fully there. For packages.org, we have kind of a mix where we have the main infrastructure is on AWS as well. And then we have some mirror nodes which are like hosted at OVH, and the main reason is that they're a lot cheaper for bandwidth, because if we hosted everything on AWS with the bandwidth costs, it would be a lot. So we have kind of on CDN infrastructure that runs around it, let's say, for the package metadata. Now, yeah, about like binary protocol and so on, I think that's maybe a little bit overkill. But if we're looking at what we did for Composer 2, which is I don't know if you've seen, but it's kind of, we released the first alpha this week, so so it's coming slowly. Like we're really working hard on getting this stable and usable for everyone. So the new metadata format there for Composer 2 actually compresses things a little bit. So before we only had like a massive JSON blob with all the package metadata for every version and so on. And then we gzipped that, which helped quite a bit, but there was still a lot of repetition. And that led to two problems. One was like network transfer stuff, and the other one is also in memory in the process. Like you would load a lot of the same information multiple times. So what we did now is kind of it's very simple, like deduplication / compression algorithm, which kind of goes through all the versions, and as long as stuff doesn't change in the Composer JSON between two versions, it just keeps that. So it's kind of like a JSON diff from version to version, because most of the information doesn't really change, right, between every tag. Like sometimes you have 10 tags with the same Composer JSON because nothing really changed. So that helped a lot, I think, in reducing the core like JSON size, which with gzip on top, it also helps, of course. And it also helps memory usage on the client side, because when you decompress that, let's say, and like recreate 10 objects out of this JSON, with the intern strings in PHP, you end up with actually the same string instance. Like let's say you have a require that stayed the same for 10 versions, then the 10 objects will have the same string reference. So you have only one time the memory usage there. So it helped quite a bit for that. Another thing we did is that we split up the dev versions from the rest. So for every package, we now have 2 files. And so we just store all this in the cache. And if you don't require like a minimum stability of dev, then we don't load the dev ones at all. And so first of all, we load less, which is good. But the main benefit really of this is that the cache is also staying longer up to date, because the dev ones, they tend to change a lot. Like every commit you do, you update the dev version. And on the other hand, as long as you don't tag a new release, the other file will be stable. So if you run like
your cache, right?
Right. So you cache that locally on the machines, and we just send the if modified since request to the server. And if it wasn't modified, you just get a very short response.
All right. So you mentioned about mirrors, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can I become a mirror?
Yes and no. I mean, yes, there is some information about that on packages.org. I wouldn't. I mean, so the situation is like this: that we have some people running mirrors, mostly in Asia and South America and maybe in Africa. I'm not sure anymore. And the main reason is that those tend to be far away from our mirrors, so they have like higher latency and so on, and it's also typically countries with fairly low bandwidth on the house connections and so on. So they tend to have like really slower update times due to that. And so I really understand that people do this, and like with China as well, it's a big issue with the firewall there. Like I think There's just a lot of stuff that is slowed down immensely if it goes through at all. So they're running a few mirrors there as well. If you're in Europe, I would say you probably don't need to. Like, I don't think it really benefits much because we have already like, I think 5 instances and like a lot of bandwidth. So I would say don't do it just for the sake of doing it, but you can. It's just that those that are not run by us are not, they're not part of the repo.packages.org domain, like DNS resolution. So you have to configure them yourself if you want to use another mirror. So that's why I wouldn't really encourage people to just go crazy with this, because it's, if you don't need it, like it makes things more complicated for like the users as well. And
okay, updates, maybe cache, things like that, right?
yeah, I think we'll have to see with Composer v2. Like if we really worked a ton on performance and both like updates and installs and network. Like really all the aspects have been improved immensely. So I would say try that. If it's still not fast enough and you feel like the mirrors are the problem, we can talk. But yeah.
Right. So Composer 2. Can you make a really quick summary of what are the changes, the cool things, but for end user? And should end user actually adjust his Composer JSON file in order to be compatible? Okay.
So for end users, we try to really not change anything. Like in the interface, let's say the command line interface that you use really has very, very, very few changes. The Composer JSON also pretty much no changes. You can look at the upgrade log, like the upgrade file we posted with, it has details for users, it has details for plugin authors and so on. So just look at what's relevant for you. But the stuff for users is really not a lot. So you don't need to adjust anything. The main problem, I think, for end users is going to be plugins. If you're using plugins which are not yet compatible with v2, then you can't really upgrade.
But you're not releasing yet before majority of the plugins are updated, right?
Well, so I contacted like most of the most popular plugin authors. I don't remember, like a month or 2 ago, probably 2 months ago. I asked them, please have a look, please upgrade your plugins, just because we're coming with the release and I don't want to be blocked. I'm not sure, to be honest. Like I haven't tracked this in depth, but like the first month, nothing happened, and then I started communicating more and more about v2 just to get like more people to try and get a bit more pressure on the plugins as well, just to. Because I think if people ask them, then things tend to move a bit faster. Or if you're using a plugin that's not compatible, maybe you can fix it yourself, right? Like it doesn't have to be from the maintainers themselves. But yeah, I'm not sure what the current state is with this, to be honest. I've been focusing on.
I think one of the hosting platforms helped you a lot, because it started to install the dev version of Composer on production. We've got lots of complaints about that and started fix everything immediately.
Okay. yeah. There were a few accidents there where people were installing like snapshots and they were not really aware of this. But yeah, I think
the fix is actually very easy. I've helped fixing like 3 or 4
most plugins. Yes.
Like that. Yes.
Yeah. No, I think we really didn't like change too much of the stuff that would affect people. We tried to be fairly conservative, but we did change. Like internally, we did a lot of changes to really have it more reliable, more deterministic, especially. So less weird bugs of if you run this and then this and then this, you have this weird state in your installed like packages, and then something happens. This shouldn't happen anymore. It's really way more deterministic and much faster. I would say those are the 2 big things for me for end users.
That's actually big, yes, for end users, for sure.
I hope so. And then there's a ton of like new smaller features that you should go through the changelog, because I don't have it all in mind anymore.
All right.
But it's a big.
All right, we have a question from audience, and what do you think about the idea to have a composer-like tool as a built-in native package manager for PHP?
So as built-in native package manager, I assume you mean shipped with PHP?
Yeah.
Or I don't know. Like, to be honest, I would say it's not really my problem. Like, we're focused on building the tool, and if people want to ship it with PHP, I think it would be nice. It would simplify some things on our side, because like we have some support issues about setup, this and that, but it's not that much. I think at this point there are enough easy ways to install it that it's not really an issue. But I think Pair is finally out of PHP for PHP 8, right? Or already in 7.4. I'm not sure anymore.
Right.
But so yeah, maybe there's a gap there to fill, or maybe it's fine as it is. Like the main thing is I don't want to spend the energy and time discussing this to death on the PHP internals list. So if someone wants to take that over and do it, fine. Why not? But it's just...
All right, but if there will be native implementation that is made with like C language, not PHP, that is an extension that is bundled, will it be still possible to develop it and support it for you?
That's another question. For me, probably not. I mean, I have close to no clue about C. So I'd rather not go in that direction, to be honest. And I don't think it makes a lot of sense for like most of the stuff. Again, like I think with V2 we improved so much on so many fronts that it's also much less needed, or like the gain you would have by having a C extension is much less. I think it still might help a little bit for the solver, for example, because that's like a lot of kind of iterating and number crunching. But if you look at most projects, like the solving time is actually not that high. And especially now with V2, it's if you only do like partial updates in V2, they're usually very fast, because we only look at the packages you want to update and not at everything anymore. So doing a require or partial update of one single package is gonna be much faster.
Yeah, that may help, but probably does not worth it. Yeah. So another question. There is a pickle project that can install the pickle extension, and is there a plan making this or something like this a part of the composer?
So yes and no. I would say there's a long-term hope that we will get there and that we'll get it in, and that we can like install extensions. That would be great, I think. But also it hasn't been such a huge problem. I would say like it's, it would be a convenience thing. And yeah, the question is really like, on which environment does this work, right? Like, because
all environments.
Ideally, yes, but the problem is like if you're on a Linux machine, then do you need to run like Composer with sudo, or it's kind of tricky. Like it's because the extensions, you cannot just install them in the vendor dir and then add them to PHP at runtime. Like that just doesn't work like that. So they need to be installed globally in the PHP scope, and that makes things a little bit trickier. But I had a little talk with Pierre Joy, which is kind of leading the effort for Pickle, and I think we'll look at it. Like if I told him like just try and get it working as a plugin for now, and if once it works and we can kind of play with it a little bit, if it makes sense, I think we'll happily merge it in as a native thing that ships with Composer. But it's just
Cool.
like right now, I really want to focus on getting the V2 out of the door first as it is, because it's got already like lots of goodies. So.
Right. It's definitely worth releasing, and yeah, it adds a lot in terms of performance. I've tried, and actually it like feels faster for the end user.
I think I mean, just this week I merged a few things already, which should improve even more, and there are a couple more that should come. So it's yeah.
So what's actually missing before taking a release?
So there's one big pull request that's got a few test failures, and we need to figure out stuff there. But that would improve things a lot for update times, by kind of trying to remove as many packages as possible before we try to resolve things. So kind of really trying to reduce the scope to the very minimum. So that I think would help quite a bit. So I'd like to get it in, but we'll see how it goes. And otherwise, it's just mostly bug fixing and like people testing it, I think.
All right. So we need more testers, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like there's one known bug that we have somewhere in the solver that sometimes things go boom, and that we definitely need to fix. But it's a really tricky one as well, so we'll see when that happens.
So,
but otherwise, I think like it's almost ready.
Yeah. In order to catch such a bug, do you need to Composer to be ran in kind of special mode, like dump in the solver or something like that?
No, I think. I mean, I would say just trying it out on projects, and with the main thing is like we know the basics work.
Okay.
But the problem is we have a lot of users, and they have a lot of different use cases and usage patterns, and like probably if you do this in that way on that command, it's not gonna work, or I don't know. Like we probably broke stuff somewhere. I just don't know where, but like especially in all the combinations of parameters for the commands and stuff like that. Like there's just a lot of things which are not like fully tested, and so we need to rely on people to really use it and say if anything if there are regressions. I don't think it's lots, but most likely there are some things. But you can use the alpha right now. And
alpha, yes.
By
doing the Composer self-update.
Right, so self-update with -- preview will get you the alpha. And I would say, I mean, I've been using Composer V2 since, I don't know, 6 months or so, and it's, it works. It's just, as long as you don't have plugin issues, I would say go for it and use it. It's not released stable yet, but it is pretty stable.
Okay. We probably got used to it before the release of 1.0 of the Composer version.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, the gold release. All right. So there is another question about Composer. We have a lot from the people who are listening, and it's about not the like production mode, but about the development mode, the mode that you develop packages in. So as far as I know, there is a special like development commands that is doing symlinks and stuff like that in other package managers. So people are asking, how about adding something like repositories dev section in Composer JSON to make local development of several packages more easier? So in dev, you can specify path for a package, and in usual repo, that could be a real repository.
Yeah, that's something that I think we should look at eventually. I agree. Like this is a use case that's not super well supported. If you do need that, I would highly recommend trying this Studio plugin. I think you find it at Franz Liedke. Because if you just search Studio, it's kind of like
Okay.
Composer and Studio is not
Composer
super easy
Studio.
to find.
Okay.
But
That's like package development studio.
It's the author is Franz Liedke. So
all right, thanks for the
maybe
tips.
I don't know if we can put like links later on somewhere, but anyway, just search for that. Like it kind of adds this capability to add like path repositories that gets like swapped in and out as you need. So
all right, well, having it out of the box may help, because I guess that's quite complicated plugin, and it may break a lot because of the changes internally in the composer, right?
I'm not sure how it goes with V2 yet. I haven't looked.
Okay.
But
yeah, that's what I'm talking about. All right, but that also may be more burden to support. So
that's the thing. Like it's always a balance between, you know, how much time do we have to spend on this, and so yeah, just
okay. So let's change the topic a bit. So you've actually started the autoloading trend in the PHP, and it was later adopted by the PHP Fig as PSR standard. What's your opinion about the standards overall?
I think PSR 0 came before Composer, I think, or I think we definitely helped to make it widespread, but
in the meta document it mentions Composer. So I guess that's based on Composer. Maybe I'm bad with timing as well. That was a long time ago.
I have no idea. Yeah.
So what
I have
are your
no
thoughts?
Idea, to be honest. But anyway, my thoughts, I think, I mean, most of the PSRs, I think they have value. I would say, I mean, I'm a little bit biased with the logging one because of Monologue and everything, and I kind of helped a lot to bring into life. But I think this one, to me, it makes a lot of sense. The autoloading stuff makes a lot of sense. The HTTP one I haven't used extensively, but it's also good to have, I guess. And then I think after that, it's like there's less and less value out of them in a way, right? Like the more specific they become, the less really valuable they are for the community at large. So I think that's probably why we also saw like a less and less interest in developing new ones.
Recently, there actually is some activity.
Yeah, it's back. Okay. I haven't looked a lot, but yeah.
Okay. All right, but it takes time, so maybe in a few years, not now.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. So the question about login, since we started talking about the login, and you're after of the monologue, fingers crossed. The login mod that you're collecting stuff in memory and then dump it, right? So what's the balance between the having a really good context logged and the memory consumption? What would you recommend?
So I would say for web requests, I mean, how much context are you really dumping in there that it's becoming a memory issue? Like, you know, I would say in a web request time frame, there's only so much happening. Like I would say you can probably log a bunch of stuff there and not really worry too much about the usage.
Queries. Many things could be actually logged.
Yeah. No, for sure.
Will
I
help.
mean, sorry, you cut off there a little bit.
I mean, that would definitely help in if there is a problem, but it's not really needed most of the time. So,
Right, yeah. I think for stuff like that, if it's too much, then maybe having like an optional flag or something that's, maybe you set a cookie, and if the cookie is set, you can have like extensive debug mode or something where you can optionally
but
opt in.
yeah, but that would prevent you to get the real errors from the real user that you cannot really reproduce, and
That's for
that's
sure.
the most important.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, that's why I would say like log all the things you need, and then if you need more memory, then get more memory. Like, I would say like memory is cheap enough these days that like getting VMs with a lot of RAM is not. It's not usually really the pain point on the server, I would say, but obviously it depends on the application. And the other thing, maybe I would quickly say there is, if you're doing long running processes, then obviously, if you start logging tons of stuff in there, it's gonna build up. So usually long running processes, they're more like workers and stuff like that. And one of the last releases of Monolog added this reset method on the logger. And so if between every job you call like logger reset, that will flush all the information, and it makes it behave more like a request model where every job is its own scope for the logging. And then because if an error happens, you don't really want the logs for the last 200 jobs that you processed, or like 20,000 jobs, and then you get like a really, really lot of information for nothing.
Right. But
so that helps a lot to manage the memory as well. How often what? Sorry?
How often to call it? How often to flush the logs?
So there I would say really at the end of every job. So when you completed a job, you flush it and then you start the next one. Then it's kind of like a new request, right? In a CLI context, in a way. It's a cheaper way than killing the process every time, let's say. But
all right. About the extra projects you have. So main two projects are likely the Composer and Monolog. That's like big things, but you also have side projects such as the presentation engine, Sleepy, right? You're still using it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't done a talk in over a year now, I think, so I'm not using it heavily, but technically, yes, it's still there. Like, is it what? Stable?
Stable?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a piece of JavaScript, like it runs. I don't need to touch it, so. But I wouldn't really recommend using it if you don't like have to.
Do you have any other interesting projects? Maybe yours, maybe others that you contribute to?
No, not really. I mean, I'm so focused on Composer these days. I'm just like, I don't know. I just spent the whole week on on stuff for Composer. I'm completely brainwashed with this.
Okay, but do you want to spend your time like in the old days for different cool things and not invest all your time into one thing?
I don't know. Like, I quite enjoy this. I think, especially with V2, it's been quite exciting to be able to do bigger refactorings and like actually getting really work done, and not just like maintenance and small fixes and small stuff. So that's been quite exciting, especially as like seeing the results is really quite good. So yeah, so far I'm quite happy like that, but we'll see.
What feedback do you get about your projects, about the composer, about the monologue, like positive and negative? Any outstanding examples?
Not so much anymore. I would say things have calmed down a little bit. Like if you watch my talks from a few years ago, I had a bit more like salty examples there where people were getting really angry or. But I think it's kind of at this point it's mostly it's just there and it works and people don't really care anymore. Like it's
Just works.
yeah, it's just infrastructure. Like I don't know. There's still feedback every now and then, but not a lot. Like
so you're not getting positive feedback either, right? It's like just
a little bit, I would say.
We're happy, but we have no idea how it works and who maintains it, etc., right?
Right. Yeah. I think that's the main mindset. I don't know. I might be wrong, but I'm getting a little bit of positive feedback with V2 for sure. Like people trying it, I think most of them have been impressed and quite happy to see the improvements. So there, yes, but otherwise, yeah, it's coasting, let's say.
Okay, and well, I think that will be kind of closing questions. And what was your worst and maybe funniest fuck up as an engineer?
Ooh. I should have asked me that before that I have time to think about it. Yeah, I mean, yeah, worst. I think worst probably is like messing up a little thing because I missed, like I was using Guzzle for doing like parallel requests. And then importing files into stuff, and I missed the fact that it was using some index like in the array to match like the resulting requests of the to the actual job it needed to take. And I changed the array index somehow by trying to do a smart optimization, but actually like it removed some array indices and it started mapping the wrong job to the wrong response to the wrong job, and it started like importing stuff in the wrong places. And like that's one when you realize what's going on, you're like, because that's actually really like that's pretty bad for like customer stuff, kind of data flowing in the wrong places. And
give based on it?
Sorry?
Any advice you can give based on this?
Just read the code better before you try to do optimizations, I guess. Yeah, that too. But no, I mean that was really a nasty one because as long as you test it with like 1 or 2 requests, it's fine obviously in development. But then you push it out to prod, and then there with higher parallelization, you get like really weird results. So obviously we didn't catch it until it was too late, but it was quick to shut down the workers and fix things.
Probably we have a few minutes for extra questions. Irina, do you still have time?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Okay, I think we have time for the last question, and then we can finish the interview. Okay?
All right. So the last question would be about the thing called 5. Are you aware about the that is to verify the var dependencies signatures?
Yes. So I think it's more about like installing and updating signed files, right?
Yes, yeah. Do you plan to have anything like that in Composer and distribute the Composer package as like the file that is signed?
So I'm not sure, to be honest. Like right now, we do have signatures for the file files. So all the files are signed. It's just that we use another mechanism than Five is using. And to me, like the mechanism they're using, I find it not really applicable to the broader user base, because I don't remember if they based it on GPG or something, but it's like I had a look at it and I was like, look, for me, we cannot use this just because I want something that's gonna work for everyone on every OS and without setting up stuff. And so we based the signatures on OpenSSL because you have the OpenSSL extension already installed, and that makes it easier. But yeah, that's just my point of view.
All right, got it. So for the closing, do you have any advice for the people who are listening us?
Advice, try Composer V2. It's going to make your life much better.
All right, that's good. Thank you very much for the answering the questions. That was awesome. We've got some really great insights about the Composer and other projects you participate in. And yeah, again, thank you very much from me personally for making PHP as it is and introducing the packages.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Jordi, thank you very much for joining us for the interview. And Sasha, thank you very much for preparing this interview. I think it went really interesting, and we will be happy to watch it again in the recording when it is available, and enjoy it. So Jordi, I'm not sure if you are going to join us today more or not. I mean, Zoom.
Yeah, that's in 2 hours, right?
It's after lunch and
2:30,
like 1:30 your time.
Okay. Yeah, I think I might be able to join. So.
Okay, if you can, we will be glad to see you again.
Sure.
So we are going to have a short break and then continue the conference. Thank you very much.